Thank you for being here. Thank you for attending Our Soil 2025. Today, I want to talk to you about what is regenerative soil, because that is the implicit theme in all of this. We're all components, we're all demonstrating different aspects of what regenerative soil is. And it really boils down to five aspects. Ray Archuleta and I will be talking about, how to make things simple, how to make things super clear. And he has so much experience at it. And he sometimes does it with a shovel, sometimes he does it with bottled water and soil in the palm of his hand. It's amazing. What I've done is make it visual, make the cycles visual so we can know where we are, connect it down to the biochemistry, and then simplify it down to five aspects so that we can test and verify those aspects individually and put it together for the full holistic picture. And it is an absolute pleasure to work with Ray, to work with Todd Harrington, to work with all these people who, are the pioneers, the linchpins, the exemplars in this whole thing. And it's just an honor to be here and an honor to be able to have created something that helps them with their work, even at the highest levels. So they use my books in the education component of what they do with their clients. So it's a wild honor, but it boils down for me to these five aspects. And we'll talk about those today. They combine to make regenerative soil, and they really started with questions. And I think questions are very powerful things. And if we take the time to ponder them, they will reveal principles, and they themselves can be principles. So, how did nature create soil? Is a fundamental question, a key question for what is regenerative soil. How does soil heal itself? It's another fundamental question. How does it regenerate, right? How can we participate in the cycles of nature, which are regenerative? And when we participate with them regeneratively, we contribute to soil building, nutrient cycling, the growth and stabilization of ecosystems from micro to macro. So, and this is what everyone, this is, and I know anyone can do this. This is what these people are doing. This is what I am doing. This is what like exemplars and just unbelievable people are doing all over the world. We're all creating soil that gets better and better every season, and biology and systems and relationships that gain momentum. So, gardeners, indoor growers, farmers at any scale, ranchers, lawn care folk, landscapers, everyone in between, anyone who works with soil. So, conservationists, restorationists, remediators, environmentalists, all those people need this literacy to actually understand what they're doing and how to do it regeneratively. Because there's a lot of misplaced things right now going on. There's a lot of, good intentions, maybe greenwashed intentions at times, a lot of times. You see these things get pushed through that make no sense and they cause so much harm. And there is some adversarial things going on, but that's why we need to commune as a community and develop. Well, this is where quorum sensing comes in, because when we gather to discuss ideas that are common across all these different applications and in our own ways and in our own context, we commune around things that we care about, that we have reverence for. What happens is we develop common sense. So we're gathering, we're talking about this healthy soil, healthy plants, healthy animals and people, and this virtuous cycle that we're seeing in nature, in these businesses, in these consultants' careers, in your backyard. And it's this that we are really gathered for, and it can play out all these different ways. And that's why the cycles are so important, because you see yourself in the cycle. I saw, by looking at the cycles, all these amazing speakers, all these amazing people out here, and I've been able to gather and honor and create a system, a bridge between all these folks by going down to biochemistry and the first principles of nature at work. So before I get any further, who am I? I'm Matt Powers. I'm an author and an educator. I was originally a backyard gardener, seed saver, heirloom seed aficionado, and then plant breeder, and then I was a spokesperson at Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. You might remember me from my live sessions there, the daily lives, and that was a lot of fun. And then you might know me from my YouTube or soil, because what happened was I created the first curriculum for K through 12 in permaculture. It's a long, crazy story how I became a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher, never intended to be a teacher. My plan was to be a musician. And I had a two-story apartment in Brooklyn. If you know Brooklyn prices, you know how that is. That's amazing. Just playing bass and working at Kochek. But eventually, like, they wouldn't even let me hang coats. They would just have me play bass, you know? And so I had a wild life very early on. Limousines would come and pick me up on dirt roads and find me and take me back to the rehearsal studios. And yeah, dirt roads, mountains. You know, that's where we raised my kids, was in the foothills, because my wife got cancer in the middle of my career, and I quit it all because she prayed about it. She said the answer she got was that we had to leave. I'm like, I'm in the midst of my climb in the music industry in New York City as a performance based, bass player. I did some studio work, but primarily I'm like a live guy and a touring guy. I'm not like I did a bunch of like things. I had a lot of fun recording, but I don't. I was more of a rock bassist, performing live and that energy and everything. As you can tell, I love live energy. But that was where I was, and I was very blue collar about it. Like, I was coming up through the ranks. I worked really hard. I practiced 6 to 8 hours a day. That's the only reason I was there. I wasn't naturally talented. I was naturally persistent. And so it was my skills that got me there. And so it was like so hard fought, so hard won. And I prayed about it, and the answer I got was, you got to leave. And it was so hard, but it was all correct. It was all worth it. The prayers guided us on the right path, and I ended up a substitute teacher and then a full-time teacher started off in Fresno, Unified Fresno, and then Madera County, and really underserved folks. And I fell in love with teaching, and I got healthcare because I was the teacher finally, so I could support my wife, because my wife, she just kept getting cancer. So my wife got thyroid cancer, lost her thyroid when we were really young. Our 19-year-old son was 1 year old, so it was 18 years ago. And then the cancer kept coming back. So she got melanoma 3 months after the radiation, and melanoma again, and they had to do surgery because it almost reached her lymph nodes. And then there was more things that just kept coming up, different forms of cancer. For the most part, the other forms of cancer were less dangerous, more slow moving, but there's always something. And so our kids grew up in this state of like, your mom is sick, it's life threatening constantly. And so I turned to gardening for therapy and also to get organic food, because that was the only thing I figured out I could like control. We did the Gerson therapy, we did juicing. Eventually discovered the farmers that were making our juicing carrots were terrible, and I realized I had to do it all myself. DIY, something I believe in. And so it was really hard. It was really hard because it's like where it's bare soil to 140-degree soils, and you water it twice a day, 15, 20 minutes, and it's still only 20 degrees. It's 120 degrees. So you needed mulch, you need to do a lot of work, you need to bring up the organic matter, you need to create multiple canopies of shade. I had to do permaculture. And so I did permaculture, and then I started doing things that like everyone in the region was like, that's not possible. No, show me. And they would come over, and I would like try to show them where the top mulch was and the compost added, and then the original soil, and then the soil differentiation was gone because the humics had and the biology had been watered down into it, and it had completely started building structure. And so I went down to an arm, you know what I mean, like to my shoulder, with people who were the granddaughter of the person who planted the orchard. They're tending this olive orchard, and so if you took permaculture K through 12, permaculture student online, my first course, we made bread with her. So, so I had this amazing opportunity where I was at a school that had no curriculum, had no books. I am a writer. That's what I went to school for. And I was kind of like a failed writer. I tried, and gave up. So I became an English teacher. Sound familiar? And I just dedicated my life to my kids. And I started mixing in permaculture, and I realized there was no curriculum for permaculture. I created it, and I started creating more and more advanced curriculum and finding the areas of need. And one of the areas of need was this disconnect between soil biology, you know, natural farming, Elaine Ingham, biological farming, Ruth Stout, all these people doing it that way, and then chemistry and Albrecht and John Kemp, Don Huber, all these folks. And so I had to go down to the biochemistry to connect them because it's the biology individually that is doing these roles in the cycling of the nutrients and the minerals. So that's like where I came into this. And I wrote Regenerative Soil really as a way to bridge my understanding and then make it so that my peers and my mentors could understand why I'm friends and promote this person's stuff and your stuff. Because so many people are like, you got my stuff. Forget about all of them. And I'm like, there's a reason they're successful. And a community is not like a winner take all thing. A community is ecosystem. And so you're gonna have different people occupying different niches or niches, as some people say. The, that's natural. And so natural is multiple ways of cycling, different people at different junctures in the cycling and distribution, right? So we're not all at a bottleneck, causing an imbalance in the economy, socially, all of it, right? So I just saw this and I was like, if we're going to be regenerative, we have to be regenerative like with each other in a community. And the way to do it is create something that brings everyone together. And I think that's why I became a bestseller. But I never displaced Gabe. So Gabe had his book Dirt to Soil as number one, paperback. Number two was the audiobook version of Dirt to Soil. So I got to number three, and then Regenerative Soil Microscopy, my second book in the trilogy, is always in the top 10, and it's reached number one multiple times. And I feel completely just so blessed for that. And the reason it's been all so successful is because I found this profound disconnect and need for holistic thinking. So, I learned Alan Savory's holistic management. I learned Darren Doherty's Regrarian method, all these permaculture concepts. They're so holistic. And I saw a lack of that in the soil community. And so, what I brought together was something that was structured like permaculture and set up so that it was all standard based, all citable to real things, and all provable with testing yourself and doable yourself. And when I did that, it caused just an explosion. People were doubling their yields. People were finally able to really lean into things because they could see it, because they could vet it. And it's been just an incredible, incredible journey to go from a bass player to a teacher, an educator, to a citizen scientist. But it's been absolutely miraculous, and I'm just so thankful to this community, to my mentors and my peers. It's I just feel incredibly blessed because so many of them they're doing the work. They pioneered this thing. They're this, you know what I mean? But the ability to see everyone and see all the pieces and organize it, that came from all my curriculum. I have a master's degree in educational psychology and education developmental psychology. And so how we learn is what I became an expert on. And I was teaching teachers how to get rid of homework and do authentic learning so they can get higher test scores, numbers on, standardized tests without teaching to the test. because they actually know it. They actually have the skill. Yeah. So that's like what I do, and that's why I'm so focused on action, so focused on community, so focused on supporting each other and testing. That's why the R Soul database was the natural product of all this, so that we can showcase what works by testing before and after an action and showing what the inputs are for that action, the amounts, the timing, management, all that, and like what the compost looks like, what the biofertilizer looks like, and then layering on DNA testing, layering on the sensing meter, which is in the other room. So this is redox. This is the plant sap analysis of the minerals. This is all those incredible things and more. pH, EC, electrical conductivity, and bricks. So this is the Nutriscope, and this is phenomenal. This is a brand new. Ooh, see that thing's loose. All right, it just wants to jump out and test fruit. Is what it wants to do. So this is the one for grabbing leaves. This, when you take it out, this is for putting directly on the fruit, on the surface of like an apple or a tomato. And then there's a version that does liquid, and there's a version that they're working on for soil and compost and heterogeneous substances. So like it could be the grindings of flour, and you could then uh, do, instead of one pinprick test, you could do like you could do an aggregate test. This is a complete game changer. We've wanted mineral testing in real time like this. Now we're going to get it. Not only that, we're going to be able to do aggregates. You're going to stir the compost, stir the soil. For the first time ever, this is going to change so much. So thank you to Sensing, to the Nutriscope, Sensing US. There's two branches, folks. You got to go to the US one. You can save over $1,200 on that. So all these people are supporting me. Doing my best to promote them and bring them to the fore and unite our community through you all, through our peers, through our mentors, through the people who are starting out, through the people who are at all different scales. That's really the power of this event, is that we gather to do that. So that's who I am. I try to really gather people together, honor people, showcase people, to create inspiration, to empower folks to take action in their own lives that is regenerative. All right. So the 5 aspects. Got to get back on point, Matt. So number one is minerals, right? So this is how soils really began. When we asked that question, how did nature create soil? Well, there was physical action, grinding, and there was also chemical action. There's weathering, there's wind, there's carbonic acid from the rain. There's all these different chemical and physical actions that are breaking down the geology. And for us in the soil, we've inherited this, right? And so you could have too much of this, not enough of that. And it's creating coherence, which is a balance between these minerals, because they have antagonism and there's some synergy, but they have relations. They have relationships that can be detrimental. So we want to lower toxicity. We want to balance things. We want to establish the proper ratios, right? Calcium to magnesium. We want to also reduce that antagonism with buffering. That's what organic matter does. It's literally sandwiching in between the physical minerals and glomming onto them and then sticking them together to create the structure. So, yeah, organic matter. I know I'm like jumping to a different, part of the 5 aspects here, but I'm here to tell you that like they're all going to overlap like that. So bear with me. So they balance the mineral amendments, and they buffer the pH too. They don't change the pH of the clay, sand, and silt particles. When you shake it up and there's now organic matter in there, it will cause the aggregate reading to be closer to pH 7. It's buffering, but it's the combination of those things, right? So you can make more and more reduced, more and more acidic, if you're alkaline, organic matter, but the actual clay, sand and silt, they might, cycle faster. They might, you might have more access to things, but they themselves aren't magically going to change into something else. There might be more access, might be more solubility, there might be more microbial release, but what's there is there. It's an important distinction. And so this is also why people do foliar feeding. John Kemp is like, does this excellently, right? And so he diagnoses what's lacking and then what can't go on that soil because that soil can lock that up. So he does chelated versions and these blends and all these different things, and you're adding it as a foliar spray, not touching the soil, and not imbalancing things further or locking things up, and you're getting the result you want from your plant. It's genius. And this is, Chris Trump and natural farming doing the foliar sprays as well. This is, at the highest levels of like compost extract tea. That's like we're talking about Todd Harrington. So let me tell you about Todd. So Todd Harrington helped Elaine Ingham set up her first school in the 90s and then went commercial and has been doing DNA testing, chemistry testing, and biology testing all together this whole time. So what he does is he does a static compost that's passively aerated from below, and he has these piles that he goes through the hot composting, and then he adds the worms. Sound like a Johnson suit yet? But it gets better, and then he plants the target plants in it. So he takes like seedlings of the target plants and puts them in the top of this curing compost, inoculates with arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, plants it in there, and then feeds the plants in the biology the missing minerals, usually a fermented biological route to get those minerals. But he does it so that the compost is so laden with that lacking mineral or minerals that, and it's also in a biological form. It's also part of the organic matter. Then he can do it as he calls it LBA, liquid biological amendment. And then he adds that on at the rate to give you the parts per million of that mineral per acre. He was an engineer originally. He's really smart. So, and I'm really, really excited to do more documenting and share more what Todd's doing and be out in the field with both Ray and Todd. It's a wild honor to be included in their whole scene. And so that's what Todd's doing. And it works incredibly well. So microscopy plus chemistry plus DNA plus his engineering genius, it's success at any scale. And they're proving with Ray and him together that anything is possible. They're working with some of the largest companies in the world and making amazing things happen. So it's really important to get your minerals right because remember the plant health pyramid from John Kemp? I've taught it. It's in my course. It's in my book. Huge thanks to John for, years ago, 6 years ago, giving me permission to have all those images in my book. Just wonderful. And it's just such a key component in all this. So what does that mean? Well, the plant health pyramid, the first two layers of it, first is dealing with the sugars from photosynthesis. Next is the nitrogen. And if you don't turn those things into what they need to be turned into during your 24-hour period, they back up. And they're simple sugars and nitrates. And those things attract pests and disease and viruses. And so if you don't have certain minerals, they're like electric key locks, and you don't unlock the next part of the cycle without that mineral in the right amount of that mineral. And so that's just the basics. If you don't get those minerals into those plants at those rates, you don't get disease resistance, you don't get immunity, you don't get pathogen resistance because you've got these buildup of simple sugars, buildup of nitrates. So you got to get your minerals right. It's also what many Albrecht folks say and do, right? They focus on the minerals first. Brian will talk about this in his talk again this year. Getting the minerals right made it so that the biology thrived. That's why this is all, overlapping, right? It's all overlapping to create regenerative soil because they all work together. So Todd does it, all the time at the same time though. Like he doesn't just do minerals, he's doing, minerals and biology all at once. So number two on of the five aspects is biology. It's what created soil, in the first place. It was the partnership with plants and light, air, and minerals. It was the biology. So arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi is said to be responsible for all the phosphorus, perhaps all of it, if not the majority of it, of phosphorus inside plants. So the cycling plant available phosphorus was all made available by fungi, specifically arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. So plants have always had this symbiotic relationship with biology. It's they came into being that way. They evolved together. Whatever language you want to use, they adapted together. They were born together. Whatever language you want to use, they were always together. Plants are symbiotic with biology, just like you are. Just like your gut biome, you rely upon to live, they too rely upon it for their health. So gut biome for them is endophytic biome. And then the roots are mycorrhizal fungi and rhizophagy. Rhizophagy, root feeding, they feed on microbes. They literally absorb whole microbes and then they oxidize them. And some of them survive, but some of them, a lot of them do not. So they're carnivores, right? And then on the leaves, they've got purple non-sulfur bacteria that's also photosynthesizing in the leaves. Who would have known? And then algae doing the same thing inside the plant. And then you have trichomes that are filled with nitrogen fixers in all plants with trichomes, which are the leaf hairs. And then in the plant sap, you have the endophytes, and they help with sugar and nitrogen cycling, among many other things. So, going back to the plant health pyramid, these microbes, specifically these endophytes in the plant sap, they are literally helping the process to turn your simple sugars into long chain, turning your nitrate into amino acids. So they're actually part of that. And it's not mentioned, obviously, in the plant health pyramid, but that's the part I know. And I've seen and I've verified, and there's DNA testing. There's so many studies around it. And then you can do it yourself with effective microbes, with EM. These are selected endophytes. And the sugar, well, that's processed by yeasts, right? They turn it back into CO2. And up to 45% of the CO2 plants use couldn't be internal from the yeasts. And then who else? Well, it's right here, lactic acid bacteria. So lactobacillus. And they're going to turn your nitrate into amino acid. And this is a probiotic. So in other words, these powerful endophytes are also probiotics, or plants should have probiotics in them. Yeah. All right. All right. So this is the gut biome of the plant. And so we share these microbes and these relationships with the plants, with the soil, with the compost. It's this virtuous cycle. And the same is in the soil. There's a soil food web, and it works with rhizophagy. It works with arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. So all the different levels, and they all participate in the cycling of nutrients. They're all part of this loop of information and nutrition. Biology is actually the key to all mineral cycling. So that's why all of these things that we keep talking about, these aspects are overlapping to create regenerative. The biology is also changing in real time. So it's reacting to this environment. So we could have two different samples or two different like organisms that look identical, but their DNA is different because the environment determines morphological expression to how they look. It's the environment, right? Fish have fins, right? Because that's an adaptation to the environment. So the environment dictates that, and that's why getting the minerals right is so important, because if we can get our minerals right, then it will have that coherence. Then we will have the ability to have microbes in the right forms more easily. Yeah. Yeah. So one question though comes to management, right? So how are you taking care of your biology? So and also letting it gain momentum. Well, as you heard from Ray, or you will hear from Ray, the number one things are bare soil and tillage. So we need to keep it covered the whole year long, just like it does in nature. We need to build up the detritus, the mulch layer. We need also to 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 not till if we can manage, you can get that strip tillage thing and minimize your tillage. You can go less deep. You can do a lot of things to start pulling that back. And the more you do, the better it will be because it's structure that is so key. It's about building that momentum. You can add organic matter on there, but if it's just not structured, you add too much, you make a muck. So it's incredibly important to understand that these things all work together. We have to protect it so that it builds momentum. And then service crops, cover crop, but I like the term service crops from Ray. And then it's avoid poisons and toxins and chemical fertilizers. We can replace all the fertilizers. We can replace all the toxins and poisons. And instead, we can partner with life, use biology, use biocontrols. There's even, insect predatory organisms that, like Bavaria bassiana, that, is going to digest your pests. So we can do it all. We can do it naturally. We can do it with indigenous microbes. You can do it DIY, all of that. And so you'll hear from folks that are in this community, hear from folks that are speaking here. You'll see it in my books. You'll see it all over. Folks are having massive success following these practices. Number three, organic matter. It's the buffer for the minerals, literally, right? It's sandwiching in between there. It's also food, habitat, and it's also where the energy gets stored. So it's for the biology, they're getting energy, they're feeding on the energy, they're using the energy to ride things like a maglev train. And it's where they live, but it's also what they consume and break down and process into finer amounts of organic matter. It's also the soil structure. The finer the components, the more structured it can be, the more resilient, the more spongy. So they say every 1% of soil organic matter that you increase, you actually increase the water holding capacity of the soil by 20,000 gallons in the top 12 inches per acre. And obviously, that will, depending on how much organic matter you already have there, that can skew, but it's an incredibly impressive number. And you can actually have too much water holding. You can have too much organic matter. You can have a boggy area. You can have an area where water's collecting and it's almost a pond half the year. And it can really accumulate organic matter. But it's not like it's a muck. You try to like till it, it just fall like there's no structure to it. It stinks sometimes because the nitrogen's gassing off. That's not what you want, right? So we have to keep our thinking caps on when it comes to organic matter, because people have ranches and they've got all these different areas, and they might see high organic matter and be like, "Well, this is a terrible area, but it says it's so good because it's so high in organic matter." Well, no, it's accumulating. It's accumulating organic matter because that's a deposition area. You probably could dig that out and put a nice little pond there. So keep that in mind. We got to keep our thinking caps on. And like I said, it's the energy. It's where photosynthetic and plant derived energies flow, and even microbe derived energies flow and are captured. It is the battery. So your ideal level of everything depends on your soil type, your bioregions, and your goals in terms of your percentage. And this is why the database, the R soil database, is so important. I want people to have realistic expectations. So I want the all stars that are in your bioregion that have your soil type to show you where they're at. And then people will be like, well, in this bioregion, the people who are really, really kicking butt, they're at this range. And, it'll be different in Maine, in Colorado, in Texas, in Virginia, in California, in Montana. It's going to be different everywhere. And we have to keep that clear in order to be fair. And so that's why the database is so incredibly important, because we're being able to reveal those differences and give people realistic expectations. So everyone who signs up for regenerative soil microscopy gets a free year plus the beta testing time period in the database. And it's a way to keep track of all your tests. It's a way to compare your tests. It's a way to compare your tests to other people. And if you're doing microscopy, I don't know how else you're going to do it. So check that out. You can go to www.regenerativesoilscience.com. Check out all my books, all my courses, and you can join us. All right. So I need to tell you about this database's inspiration. One of the inspirations for it was the Open Nutrient Project, which is cataloging the nutrients and minerals in natural farming products like your FPJ, your fermented plant juice, right? Like all these things are variable. Which fruit? Your fruit? My fruit? What kind of fruit? Right? Like all of that matters. Where are you in the world? Right? What kind of soil did you have? All of that matters, but this is going to demonstrate the range, which is what I wanted to do with soil. So Stephen Reisner, one of the things that he did early on, this ties into organic matter, was create the dual root zone solution for cannabis farmers who are doing hydroponics and aquaponics and struggling with disease and deficiency and all these imbalances. It was Stephen Reisner who put burlap down and then he put soil on top of it and allowed their roots to go through the burlap into the water, but also stay in the soil that solved all those problems. And so you can't get everything just in a liquid form and expect everything to be great. They need that organic matter. They need that soil. They need those relationships. And it really is a problem solver. Soil is the solution. I don't say biology in that system, like he needed clay, sand, silt, and organic matter, because actually in the aquaponic systems, they tend to have a ton more variety of biology already. And it's going to be an adventure that of cataloging that world specifically, and Stephen Reisner is wanting to do it, and because the water has its own microbiology, there's the interface biology overlap, and then there's a soil biology. So it's actually very interesting. It's very interesting, and there might be things that are possible in that scenario with certain plants that are just not possible in any others. So, so that's more to come on that. Stephen Reisner is an inspiration, and he's a speaker here this year at Our Soil. Number 4, photosynthesis, plants and roots. I know it's a little bit of a bundle, but it kind of is. It's kind of this overlapped thing in nature. So the power for the entire system, all of this that builds soil, that powers all life here on Earth, is the sun. It is where all the energy comes into our system. If you think about in your memory, you've seen pictures or been around plants that are growing right out of rock, right? How are they doing that? There's the sun, there's the rock, and there's their roots. And you're like, how is this real? Well, I can tell you what, it's the biology in there helping as well. But it's the photosynthesis, the air, and some of the minerals from the rock. But these plants, because remember everything's in the air. These plants have microbes in their roots. They have microbes in the plant hairs catching on the wind. They have microbes inside them. So all these wild plants are aided by biology in such a profound way that they can grow and get a yield and break rock and create soil all over the world without any inputs. And it's that biology and the sun and the plant combination that literally creates soil, that literally breaks rock down, that literally is the powerhouse for all life. You may have too much sun, right? You may need to set multiple canopies. You may need to put up shade. You may need to create like an agroforestry lane, to create rows of shade in your system. Or like if you're in California, or if you're, in the north or in the far south, you're gonna have less light. You're gonna have to space things out. You're gonna have to be mindful of the shade so that there can be enough photosynthesis to build soil fast enough. So the same is true for the root zone. You have to be able to give it enough room to do this work at the optimal levels. And I know John Kemp says healthy plants build healthy soils. That's 100% right. That's why, there are certain examples in permaculture where they're only working with wild plants and wild, essentially weeds to build systems, to build soil. But healthy soil creates healthy plants and systems that we're growing for ourselves because we want it to happen that season. Yes, we can do wild plants and chop and drop and crimp and do all this, and it takes time. But with biology, with the understanding we have here, we can get into that space very quickly and get healthy soil so that we can get the return on healthier foods. And we can maybe stop foliar spraying because foliar spraying is excellent for the transition. And this is why, Regen Ag, doing foliar spray, John Kemp, Todd Harrington, all these folks work so well. You can build soil with your crop by getting it healthy in your current soil unless there's inhibitions. There are limits to everything. If it's dead, it's hard pan, you got to do some work. You got to bring the life in there. You got to put the life on the seed. You got to do some cover cropping. You got to keep that soil covered. Transforming terrible soil is easier than poisoned and toxic soil, right? So you got to realize where you're at. You got to do enough testing to really know where you're at, and then you can start making these gains happen faster and faster as you address each. So removing and remediating is a reality for a lot of things, but once those are out of the way, we can start healing faster and faster. And then we get to the point where we have healthy soil and it's much easier to do everything. And we have mineral coherence. We've got cycling of minerals. And then maybe the gaps are just really small and minor. Maybe because you got a sensing meter, you can track these things in real time and see, hey, I don't need anything. Everything's everything's award winning right now. And you may be like that. That is the story of the Lazenskys, right? They literally, it's just amazing. The Lazenskys, they don't use any fertilizer. So you may get to that point in your transition too. It may be sooner, it may be later because everyone's in a different space in this regenerative cycle and this healing time period. And that's why I honor everyone because we're all coming from different times and places and spaces, and we're all in we're in different parts of that big cycle, but we're all part of this cycle, creating regenerative soil, creating regenerative food, creating regenerative people and regenerative futures. Number 5, air and water. So of course we need this, right? Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, it's all in the air. It is literally the thing that makes organic life happen. So it's in the air, it's in the soil. Life is just everywhere, the components for it. And so breath of life, it's quite literal. CO2 becomes soil and oxygen through photosynthesis, and 1/10 is in reverse with respiration. So plants, they do breathe oxygen, right? They release oxygen a lot, but 10%, in relation, so it's 1/10, is re-inhaled. So that is also a reality. And drawing that CO2 down, that carbon sequestration from the air, that's really biologically driven, not just plants, not just photosynthesis, it's all of it together. And and then water. We can improve water holding capacity and efficiency by improving the structure of soil. But primarily it's by doing those first two things, keeping the soil covered, avoiding tillage. So then we will raise our organic matter, which holds more water. We can add biochar, if we want to do that sometime. You would broadcast it and then crimp it in, right? Improving our structure is what the result of all this is. And you could add biology to it too, but it will, you create that structure. And if it's doesn't have inhibitions, you could be adding the biology just on the seed and have it become regenerative. So what can we expect from doing all this? Well, you're going to have pest, virus, and disease and pathogen resistant plants. It's biocontrol, these microbes. They're also the mineral completeness, right? They're the ones cycling, which turns into cell wall integrity and immunological protection. So these improve their health, which improves their immune system, and they put their immune system on alert at the same time. And then there's higher nutrient density. And you might say, well, but they're adding everything. They're just adding everything. How could you have, better nutrient density? Well, look at the beef industry. They give those cows in the feedlots every nutrient supplement at the rates, the highest rates. And the cow that gets nothing but grass has all higher levels of those things. Nature always wins. Nature always wins. We are providing with the plants here the key beneficial biology, and we're verifying that it's there. We are providing the minerals in balance, and we are not just in balance, in enough amounts. And we are maximizing the photosynthesis and trying to hit the Goldilocks level for watering, right? So that makes for more efficient growth and nutrient allocation and accumulation. So there's not any like lag time. There's not any like recovery time or stress time. And so that turns into really, really nutrient dense food. So what does that mean? The flavors are really intense. The aromas are really, really intense. It is just such good food. And it's also, you're putting less harmful inputs into the system right out of the gate because you can replace those things. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I've presented on it many times, but you will have speakers talking about arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. We'll have speakers talking about like Terra Organics. It's going to talk about EM1, selected endophytes, reducing nitrogen. Brady of Mycomax is going to be talking about reducing phosphate and other fertilizer with arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. We can do this out of the gate. And it's overall less inputs over time as well. So even the beneficial inputs we get to start to taper off because the flywheel of momentum has built up. We have living soil now, cycling soil now. And these things come back every year. And so they are regenerative. And then this all translates into massive savings because they're doing less fertilizers out of the gate. They're erasing potentially all the fertilizers, even organic ones. They're reducing the amount of inputs that are beneficial inputs because we've created a flywheel of momentum and nutrition and cycling. This process turns into really, really good business and really, really good products for the customer, and overall health for everyone improves. It's the foundation for their entire system as well, so their business improves and strengthens every year as their soil builds and gains momentum. Healthy food depends upon healthy soil. So glyphosate can be there over 20 years. Phosphate can stick around and inhibit arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. Persistent forever chemicals are being found all the time. But if we have, the biology there that's right, we can remediate that. And there's a biological solution for all these problems. And we have proven methods, we have case studies, success stories, and we can reduce these things or remove them in many cases or buffer. So what is regenerative soil, at the end of the day? It's all these aspects. But you might say, well, what does that like mean, right? You've listed a lot of things. Well, when healthy soil is regenerative, the elements that define that health come back each year and then build in momentum and strength. So your organic matter may be at 7 to 8%, but the fractional size of the organic matter is continuously getting smaller and smaller, and structure is getting better and better. So the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi returns, the nitrogen fixers return. The organic matter is always improving regardless of whether the percentage gets better, your structure gets better, your slake test gets better, right? There's less water needed, less inputs needed over time as this momentum builds. So how do I know all this is true and is happening? Well, if you look at David Johnson of Johnson Sioux, he did one application of Johnson Sioux compost, and for 7 years there's a benefit. How does that work? So I have compost from Michael Stengel that is 4 years old. It's 2 cups in a plastic bag that's never been fully closed, and it's still moist. So this is wild because the biology, when you look at it under the microscope, there's still testate amoeba, there's still good bacteria, there's still lots of spores. The hyphae turned into spores, preparing for the time it went dormant, preparing for the time of explosion. And the other cycles kept going. The other cycles in bacteria and testate amoebae, the rudimentary soil food web continued. So all the benefits are still there. The organic matter is getting smaller and smaller. The moisture retention is still there. And I've never added water. never once added water. So this is why the leaves are in your gutter years later and they still have their structure, the skeleton of the leaf. And you're like, how old is this leaf? Because organic matter and the detritus build up over the years and creates momentum because it doesn't break down fully in one season. This desire, the hot composting, break everything down fast, get it all the small particles. Blah, 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 that's counterintuitive. Nature is doing it slow, building up, creating this compounding effect, right? Yeah. So we're going against nature's way. We're going against the pattern of nature when we're trying to speed it up too much. Instead, we slow down. We try to match nature's patterns to the cycle, and suddenly we have incredible results. So the benefits are retained and build momentum over time as they slowly break down, compounding the diversity of carbon and food and habitat and life and biodiversity. So, how did Michael Stengel do this? He recomposted his compost. He took Johnson's Sioux compost and put it into as a seed into the next compost. And it's a flywheel of activity. You're teaching it, you're training it, and you're also taking that original stuff and breaking it down way further. So his compost is unique. It's just absolutely incredible. But it's something that anyone can do. So I've seen it on other sites. I've seen it in my own work. I've seen it in other mentors' work. I've seen it in students' work and lives. We can regenerate soil, and there's so many ways to do it. There's so many amazing new ways to do it that we're talking about here at our Soil 2025. I hope that you watch all the talks. And if you'd like to learn more from me and all these topics and more in a little bit more organized fashion, I have a 20-week course. It pairs with the book. It's a peer-reviewed book, and it paces it out. We go through everything from the start of how soil came to be, all the mineral cycles, the redox, the plant biology, physiology, all of it, down to the individual microbes and their roles, and how to work with them, how to brew them, how to create them at home. So if you want to get into that, join us at Regenerative Soil starting November 3rd, just a month from now, essentially. And if you want 30% off of that, sign up for the $199 option here at Our Soil. So get the t-shirt, get the goodie bag. This is the t-shirt. You get your size, you get your choice of size of t-shirt. So get your t-shirt, get your goodie bag. I've got all these amazing goodie bags. And then, also join us live, please, because I want to give you a soil light. It's a $200 machine. I'm giving that out. I'm giving away biochar handbooks from Kelpie Wilson. We're doing a lot of fun things. So be sure to join us in the lives. But if you want a 30% discount on regenerative soil, it's $500 off. You can sign up at r-soil.com, the top tier, and you can actually win the course. So there's a raffle for either course, regenerative soil microscopy. It's your choice. And it's your choice of hardcover book. So you could sign up for that, your choice of hardcover book, get 30% off regenerative soil, which starts November 3rd, or you could be part of the raffle and win it. I love raffles. Anyone can win. I'm going to pull your name from a hat. And so someone's going to win. So the course also with that discount also has payment plans, also has bonuses. I don't get rid of those things, okay? So that's all included still. So I hope you join us. Don't miss it. It's my gift to give you. So please check it out. We've over 750 lifetime members. This is a very special community, very united community, very interactive community, and supportive community. We've got our own social network online. That 20-week course is yours. You have lifetime access to it. You also have lifetime access to the live sessions, so you can join us in any session. Many alumni have taken the course 2 to 3 times, so they can really feel like they are owning the information and able to do it in practice fully. We have people who start with no gardening experience in regenerative soil. In a year and a half from then, they're experts in soil microscopy and soil. They're teaching, they're getting paid to teach. It's wildly incredible. You're going to hear from Maurice Diaz. Just huge thanks. He's going to start you off tomorrow check out his talk. It's an absolute honor to be his teacher and to see his wild development. I hope you can join us over there. It's going to be incredible. You can go to www.regenerativesoilscience.com, check out all the courses, all the books, and you can sign up there. But if you want the discount, you got to sign up for the top tier at r-soil.com and join us. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. And I hope to see you at the next live.